let's invite to the stage one of the most well-known and beloved lawbreakers in the world, the Prince of Pot, Marc Emery.
Well, that was a very nice introduction, actually, and I actually have never heard. She's introduced me on a few occasions, Jody, but this has more resonance because I've since this first introduction I've heard since I've gotten out of prison, and you know, a lot of us go to jail who smoke marijuana or grow marijuana or sell marijuana, and the problem is not the going to jail; it's going to jail as a victim instead of going to jail as a warrior. Because I'll tell you, I've been arrested. I've tried to get arrested 52 times, but I have been arrested for marijuana 28 times, and I've been jailed 23 times. The most recent one is the most extreme, 4.5 years in a U.S. federal prison. But I got 3 months in a Canadian prison for just passing a joint once after I spoke at a university. But I've never had really an unhappy time in jail, because I felt very purposeful while I'm sitting there, and the overnight ones are the worst. They're like dungeons. There's drunk people beside you. There's people who've been in fights, and it's very unruly scene. They're always kind of dirty. They're not very pleasant jail cells, but I never felt bad. I always felt all my life I wanted to be the hero in my own movie, and I feel I'm very much doing that, because when I started breaking the law a long time ago, 25 years ago, and I always do it very transparent. It's not the kind of stealthy thing. I'm not hiding what I'm doing. Many times I've even bought newspaper advertisements to actually say I'll be breaking the law at this street and this street at this time, so you should come and arrest me, because I'm clearly breaking the law. And oftentimes they did come and arrest me, and they did take me away. And by the way, I'll go all over the place in my talk, and I can talk a long time, so you might need to reel me in occasionally. But one of the things I did in 2003, I crossed Canada, went to every province and every major city, and I smoked a bong of marijuana in front of their police station, very challenging, like a red cape in front of the police station. You can't miss this bong. It's nice and shiny and bright, and I'm blowing big stacks of smoke. And we'd publicize that I was coming to that town, and I invited everyone else to witness that I get arrested or not get arrested, right? And it's kind of reverse intimidation, because then the police are on the spot. Well, should we play into this fellow's game and arrest him and give him what he wants, which is attention, publicity, and possibly martyrdom, or should we ignore him? But either result proves the point, because the idea is to reverse shame the state, because they're always trying to shame us. You ever notice how they make it look like marijuana smoking is a bad thing? Even some of the arguments you hear are designed to stop the bad thing from getting worse. Well, you know, it's better that we control these vices so these bad things don't go to children and stuff like that. To me, marijuana people are really one of the chosen people of the planet. Like, most great things of the last 50 years, musically, architecturally, filmmaking, books, most culture of the modern era is essentially pot people. And I will say this, a lot of male homosexuals too. A lot of really great things we take for granted that are out there in films, books, art, science, medicine, are done by cannabis people. I mean, the music, every kind of musical form we listen to is done by pot people, from reggae to blues to jazz to most rock and roll to hip-hop to, I mean, really, there's just and most country western music now is those people are smoking pot. They all hang around with Willie Nelson. He's like 80 years old. He's finally met everybody in country music. He's corrupted them all. You know, even guys like Toby Keith, who have songs like The Red, White, and Blue and My America, you know, they're smoking pot with him. So even an old traditional American heartland art like country music is totally filled with pot people now. So every kind of musical form we listen to for the last 40, 50 years have been pot people. Certainly the great ones like Zeppelin, Stones, U2, all these people smoked pot. And then you look at what's going on in books and films, and most major actors are pot smokers, most major directors are pot smokers, a huge pantheon of book writers are pot smokers, and these are just the people who've admitted it. Then you get business people like Richard Branson. Bill Gates was a pot smoker when he was young. Steve Jobs, much longer into his career, smoked pot, and other things too, took LSD. I mean, Carl Sagan, a scientist with 7 theories attributed to him of importance in science, plus the show The Cosmos and his many books, smoked marijuana every day, came up with all his greatest ideas, he said, smoking pot. Travel writer Rick Steves, he's a big pot smoker. In fact, he helped legalize pot in Washington State last time. In fact, it's his book of Ireland I have with me. So, you know, when I'm seeing a pot smoker has written the travel guide by which I'm seeing your country by. So I mean, we have insinuated ourselves into everything, and it's all a very good influence. Like, you don't find mad bombers, oh, he was smoking weed every day and then he blew up a building, or he went on a serial killing spree. Those people are usually alcohol drinkers, actually. In fact, when I was in prison, every guy who robbed a bank was doing it either on alcohol or methamphetamine. And there were a lot of bank robbers. And they do get a lot of time, and probably they should, because they keep doing it until they get caught, is what I learned. But where was I going with that? I went on a bank robber tangent there. And I'm thinking, nah, that doesn't really fit my paradigm. Right, I knew that. So, and of course, that's drinking. I mean, that's such a controversial thing because we all have alcohol in front of us. Most people have enjoyed alcohol, and most people have probably done a lot of stuff or some stuff they really regret and hope no one ever mentions again on alcohol. But there's almost nothing on pot you can say has that equivalent. You know, nobody does anything. First of all, you don't change who you are on pot like you do on alcohol, or in many cases. On pot, you just perceive things more sensitively. You know, I mean, I even have this. I used to think that when I smoked pot, I became a better lover. And in fact, I don't become a better lover, but I become a much more interested participant. Like, the sex is really amazing. But I've actually recorded this to see, so okay, that's how I know. But we don't behave a lot different on pot, but what it is our perception of what's going on changes a lot. But we don't change. You'll never see pot being isolated as a reason why somebody was bullied. But alcohol is implicated all the time in bullying, or rape, or sexual assault, or unwanted pregnancies. Very few people say, well, I was smoking a lot of pot and I passed out and some bad thing happened to me, and now there's a crisis. But that happens on alcohol every hour of every day in Ireland, let alone in Canada as well. And so the government policy is literally driving our young people and people of all ages to drink, which has tremendous social costs. So although I appreciate the fact that we're in a tavern, essentially, and we're all drinking alcohol, everybody has experience with this. And if marijuana were legal and therefore very cheap and not stigmatized, in fact, we should be encouraging our young people to smoke marijuana. The common political thing is, oh, we'll legalize marijuana and only people over 21 will get it. That's a very bad idea, because everybody starts smoking pot between like age 12 and 15. Almost nobody, like I started smoking pot when I was 22, but I was a late bloomer. I had lots of comic books and science fiction and my own bookshop to keep me busy. So when I fell in love at age 21, this woman who was older introduced me to smoking pot, and it was awesome, and it's been a romance for the last 30 years between me and pot. So I was a late bloomer, but everybody else I've ever met started smoking pot between 12 and 15. And now that they're 25, 35, 45, 55, or even 65, they don't seem to have suffered for the fact they experimented with pot. But if any parent that is concerned with their children smoking pot, I say consider the alternatives. Every teenager is intensely curious. They're intensely experimental. They're going to want to try anything they can get their hands on. If you had the chance to make something easier than other things for teenagers, what would it be? Would you want them with methamphetamine or cocaine or alcohol or tobacco? Would you really trust their judgment? But then I come to them, I said, tell me what you think can go wrong if they smoked 10 joints in a night. Like, what if your 15-year-old smoke? What's the worst that's going to happen? Sleep or munchies or hunger or video games. That's a big one, I'm told. People love to get on video games. But I mean, that's what I mean. It's almost laughable. We would come up with things that are funny. And then if you said, well, what if I actually went to a rally when I got home, and I got my tolerance back quickly, and I boasted that I'd smoked 15 joints in the last couple hours. And people said, well, doesn't that show signs of addiction? I said, no, that's the 15 test. There's nothing else in human existence you can do 15 of in 2 or 3 hours and still stand here and you don't even know what I've done. And then I said, what if I'd had 15 shots? I'd be dead. What if I had 15 beers? I'd be drunk and disgusting. What if I'd had 15 Big Macs? I'd be throwing up. It's 15 of anything. If you had 15 bottles of water in 2 hours, you'd just be pissing for the next hour. So there's a consequence to everything if you do 15 of them, except pot. So, I mean, that is incredibly safe. That is safer than water. It's certainly safer than food. Even 15 apples is probably going to give you indigestion. I used to love apples, and my parents said I ate a lot, but I don't think I ate 15 in 2 hours, right? But I could smoke joint after joint. And there's going to be no short-term, mid-term, or long-term health impact from that. And the worst that might happen is, yes, I could get hungry. It's scientifically shown that marijuana does stimulate appetites, probably appetites of all kind, but seems to be healthy ones, right? It stimulates imagination. It might stimulate sleep. It might stimulate video game preoccupation. It might even stimulate a sexual desire, but we never lose sight of who we are when we smoke pot. Nobody ever does, no, I've never heard it. Oh, he went crazy after he smoked that joint. He did so weird. I've never seen it before. It was so unlike himself. No, you don't hear that when people, that same description can happen with a lot of other things, from cocaine to, psychosis to alcohol, but you won't hear that with pot. Pot is the most supremely best advertisement for itself in the world, because everybody we admire in the world smokes pot. Is that a time bell? Okay, good. That's right. So, and where was I? See, you're going to have to reel me in. What was the last thing you remember hearing me say? Right. Well, it was vaguely similar to that. But my point is, pot people are underappreciated. What we've contributed to the world is just fantastic. And if they knew this, if they really knew the extent to which everyday people go through life enjoying the works of pot people. I mean, you wouldn't want to even take away the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin. Just those three pot-smoking groups alone, if we didn't have them. And Paul McCartney and John Lennon wrote 32 songs in their canon that involve marijuana. Got to Get You Into My Life is all about marijuana. And because he used to smoke it every day, and John Lennon less frequently but often, it greatly influenced their work, and they were willing to admit that. In fact, I believe Paul McCartney was smoking up till recently, and then his new wife told him not to do that. Neil Young, here's a funny story too. Neil Young's a famous Canadian rock and roll musician. He's been doing it for like 35 years. And 3 years ago, he went to his doctor, and his doctor said, there's a tumor on your head. Now, Neil Young's close to 70. You're going to get something. And so Neil Young decided to stop smoking pot. He says, I've been smoking pot every day for 40 years. He said, but I'm writing this book because I haven't written a word of music in that 3 years. Ever since I've stopped smoking pot, I haven't written one line of music. It's in his autobiography. I just finished it in prison along with every other musical biography that there is. I've read them all, right? And pot has never had a negative reference. But here's a guy stopping pot after 40 years of having endless album after album after album. Some good, some not so good, but he's a very famous guy now. And now he admits, I'm stopping because my doctor advised it, and I haven't written a line of music in 3 years. Like, to me, that's very damning in a sense, but it's also a testament to the power that marijuana has for creativity and for making things happen. Remember, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, these aren't just ordinary guys who put out pain. They changed the world as we know it because of their relationship with, in Steve Jobs' case, LSD, but certainly marijuana and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs. And there's hundreds and hundreds of examples. So we need to address this stigmatization. Pot people are awesome people. They're the best people you could hang around with. In my experience, when you meet people, everybody's subtly trying to make you like them. When you join a social circle of people, when you're first in college or first in high school or at any level where you're being integrated into something, mostly when you look around, people are trying to get you to be like me. If you're around drinking people, hey, come and have a drink with us, right? When you're around pot people, I find, hey, share this joint with us, right? You pick up your values, you pick up principles, you pick up all sorts of habits and interests by the people around you. So the thing I would say to parents is, who do you want your kids to hang around with too? Do you want them to hang around with people who are drinking alcohol? Do you want them to hang around with people who all smoke cigarettes? Because those people all hang out together too, right? Do you want to have them with the cocaine people, the people who go clubbing together? Mostly, almost nobody does anything in isolation. They're doing it with others, and we're always trying to recruit. I'm not sure gay people recruit, but gay people hang out with other gay people, right? You'll see that. They have clubs for their thing. People of a religious origin, they hang out with each other. They're trying to reinforce their religious beliefs with each other or have a discussion about it. And people with political points of view often hang out with each other too. Typically, you don't find left-wing socialists having a social outing with a right-wing religious conservative. Typically, we orient ourselves around people who have similar philosophies, ideas that we feel comfortable with. So the thing is that if we are out there being good examples, we want to recruit. And we want to recruit straight people to smoke pot. So I think one of the most important things we have to do is get people high, Show them how awesome it is. Show them how harmless it is. Show them that it's a really good thing, that it contributes to our well-being. And we have to take political activity to reduce the stigma, because they try and stigmatize it. It always is the undercurrent of the people who don't smoke pot is that there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with us that we want to smoke pot. And they use that to demonize us, and then therefore these strange laws appear. Like Ireland's had its marijuana law now probably since the 1930s or 40s, just like Canada. And our situations are in some way similar. Marijuana's illegal in Canada except for a medical exception. But if you push. I'll give you an example, and I should probably save some of this for tomorrow, but in 1990, when I started, everything was illegal in Canada to do with marijuana, including books and magazines. You couldn't get books, you couldn't get magazines about marijuana, you couldn't get High Times. I started selling all these banned books and magazines about marijuana, and eventually 4 years later we got charged and we went to court and we had that struck down. And they had also banned all bongs, pipes, anything paraphernalia, anything related to marijuana. And in fact they banned the books and magazines and the bongs and pipes with fines of up to $100,000 or 6 months of jail. And the very interesting thing is the penalty for marijuana is only $2,000. So the penalty for actually having a book about marijuana was 50 times greater than actually possessing marijuana. And to me, that was a big clue. Because what they really fear is not people using marijuana. What they really fear is people telling the truth about marijuana and being militant about it. We know if we smoke pot that there's a prejudice against us. Very few people today are cognizant of suppressing hemp for its industrial capabilities like they did in the 30s and 40s. Today, we're a victim of bigotry. Plain and simple. And yet the bigots have been allowed to take the moral high ground. They try and give the impression that they're doing the right thing. We're helping our young people avoid depredation and what have you, and drug addiction by stopping them from marijuana. But of course, nothing can be further from the truth. Pot people are very tolerant people. The people opposed to pot are very bigoted and intolerant. The people who smoke pot are creative, usually very kind, loving, and peaceful people. There are almost no exceptions to that. Pot people are known to be pacifistic. Most police officers will tell you arresting a pot person is a cakewalk compared to arresting someone who's drunk. So they'd all prefer to arrest people who smoke pot. So we know that we're good people, but somehow our opponents in politics or in the government have demonized us for 50 years, and still it's successful, I think, in parts of Ireland. The demonization is probably less successful in Canada right now, because in Canada 55% of the whole country want to legalize, and in my home province an astounding 70% of people want to legalize. So and in America now, the majority of people have answered polls that said they don't think it's a sin or a moral failing if people smoke marijuana. So that's changed in America. It's changed a lot in Canada, and it's probably needs to change in Ireland, because once you have the majority of people thinking that marijuana is okay, it's not a sin, you're going to see the laws fall quickly. And that's what's happening in Colorado and Washington. There's some people from Belfast here, I was told, or at least from Northern Ireland, and that's great, because I was hoping to make an appointment with you to speak somewhere in Belfast on the 28th. But somebody from Belfast wrote me and said, well, listen, we got people. We just need some advice. What do you think you should do? And I thought the thing to do would be peaceful civil disobedience in the case of Northern Ireland. But you have to make a big show of it. I think we need to have signs. If we're going to smoke marijuana in front of a seat of government, you really want it to have a good, sharp political message. And one of the things that Jody started and that I really like to see are signs that say, politicians who support pot prohibition are supporting organized crime. Because we've got to reverse the stigma. We've got to remind the politicians that you're the bad guys. As long as pot's illegal, you're the bad guys. You're creating all these problems. I mean, and here's the thing, what is the benefit of the prohibition? I have never heard a politician articulate what the taxpayer gets for the millions of euros, in your case, dollars in our case, spent virtually every week, every month in Canada and Ireland on pot prohibition. What's the benefit? Because you get organized crime handling marijuana. You get young people. One of the compelling reasons to legalize pot is because here's a social circle. I was saying how we all hang out with similar interested groups and we're all trying to recruit in our own little ways, lifestyles, habits, what have you. Well, what happens when someone's 15 and 16 and there's a whole social circle of 20 people and some of them are working at McDonald's and various jobs for minimum wage and what have you, and then one guy shows up and all of a sudden he's got a car, He's got jewelry. He's got incredibly expensive sneakers. And he's got women. Why? Because he's become a drug dealer. And every drug dealer has women. They have lots of money. And they tend to lead a flashy lifestyle at that age. But what it does to his social milieu is it totally corrupts them. Because now they have no pride in working at McDonald's for minimum wage or any. What they want to do is emulate what he's got. I want women. I want money. It's a material world we live in. And once one person enters that social sphere and has all those things, cars, mobility, clothes, everything a young person aspires to want in the material world, it ruins that. So everybody wants to do drugs. And it happens almost immediately. And that's another thing that prohibition does. It corrupts our young people. And it's almost a manufactured circumstance that you think the government must know this. They know all the things I'm telling you. Every politician has heard them before. They know they're responsible for this. So there's some kind of evil in the system where they know all this truth, that there's no public benefit to prohibition. Pot people are really good people. Pot people have contributed so much to society that we really need to take action. And one of the things I was going to tell the people in Northern Ireland is if you're not getting arrested for smoking pot in a public sphere, you've got to put it to good use. So get some great signs. Put the onus back on the politicians and dare them to arrest you. Because the problem is we go to jail a lot as victims when we're pot people, but not many people go to jail as warriors. And we've got to turn that. You've got to go to jail deliberately and thoughtfully and transparently and openly, and you've got to do it with your friends and support. They don't have to smoke, but somebody should be trying to get arrested on a regular basis simply to go to court, to make those arguments, to make them to the media, to make them to the judge, to make them to the public, to get on radio and explain to people why we're doing this, that we're living in an era of a colossal injustice that's gone on for 50 years. It's absurd that it should continue in 2014, and it's time that we honor the Irish Constitution in the same way we need to honor the Canadian Constitution and end this prohibition. So I look forward to being an advisor. I would love to come back and help participate in some civil disobedience. Probably I shouldn't say that. I'll probably never be admitted to Ireland again, actually. But I think that would really move things forward. It would give people someone, and the thing is, if someone's going to be a martyr, they have to be someone with something to lose, because that's what looks honorable. If you've got a job that you could lose by being seen as an obvious representative of the cannabis people trying to get arrested, or if you've got something to lose, like a reputation. And what you don't want is somebody who's a wild man who's nothing to lose and would just crave the publicity. You need somebody who's solid, who's willing to be the one person, the go-to person, but someone who's going to transparently break that law. Even I think the symbolism of carrying one plant, one big giant marijuana plant in a pot, and sitting there until they do arrest you, or they don't arrest you, right? Because then you up the ante. If you're determined to get arrested under these terms so you can make your point, then you just get other people to come with plants. And eventually, you've got quite the thing going on that everybody in the country will be talking about. And then we'll have that big national discussion in Ireland that we've been having in Canada for some time that's allowed one fellow who's topping the polls to come out and say, I'm going to legalize marijuana. I'm going to expunge everybody's criminal record. And that's the Liberal Party of Canada that Jody will hopefully be the candidate for. So, and I've probably spoken enough, and I probably cut into some of what you'll hear at Trinity College, but I hope you won't mind hearing some of it again. And thank you very much. And I look forward to having a great time with you this evening. And yeah, okay, there you go. Thank you very much.